Welcome back, guys. My name is Wheva. I'm here at the cave in Fairfax, Virginia, and I am doing another Whispers of the Old Gods card review. This time I will be doing neutral minions. My neutral minions video. So let's just start off. Beckoner of Evil, 2 mana, 2/3. Battle Cry, give your Sithun +2/+2 wherever it is. This is a card you get for free when you purchase. When you log in during the Whispers of the Old Gods event, and anytime you purchase Whispers of the Old Gods packs for the first time, you will get this for free and Sithun. That's just something to note. This is gonna see play in Sithun decks because 2 mana 2/3 is fine. It is like baseline. Probably 3/2s are better than 2/3s because you want your 2-drops to trade up. You don't need them to usually trade down because there's only 1-drops to trade down to. But 2/3 is still fine, and in a Sithun deck, this is where you're gonna probably start. Is this card? So it's fine. 3 out of 5 gonna see play in Sithun decks. That's about it. Corrupted Healbot, 5 mana, 6/6. Death Rattle, restore 8 health to the enemy hero. 5 mana, 6/6. Good stats. And this is a cool card in a tempo deck. Death Rattle, restore 8 health to an enemy hero. A tempo deck, you don't want to restore health to your hero. So it's good tempo wise, and then it kills its tempo that it probably gained you by healing your opponent. I don't think it's good enough is the issue. And maybe you might see play in some weird mech Arcanine priest where you run it in and it dies and then it deals 8 damage to your opponent. It conflicts itself in its own card. So I definitely think I'm gonna give this like a 2 out of 5. Might see play sometime. I don't know. It isn't doing anything for me. Sithun's Chosen, 4 mana, 4/2, Divine Shield. Battle Cry, give your Sithun +2/+2 wherever it is. Oh my! This is probably another card just like Beckoner of Evil. You're gonna see 2 of in every single Cthulhu deck. This card is really solid in Cthulhu decks. It's probably it isn't as strong as Piloted Shredder, but it's basically the Piloted Shredder of the set. This card could potentially even see play outside of Cthulhu decks. That's how good it is. Because if you think about it, it's like getting 2. If your opponent doesn't have a ping effect or a 1/1 minion on the board, it's a Shredder that is a 4/2 on both sides, which is really good. So I'm gonna give this card a 4 out of 5. It's solid, has a lot of potential, and it's probably gonna see a lot of play in any Sithun deck. Eater Secrets. This is Battle Cry. Destroy all enemy secrets. Gain 1 +1/+1 for each. This is a replacement for Kazan, but it's not nearly as good as Kazan. But maybe that's a good thing, because Kazan was tilting as... I guess this is tilting as well. Kazan was just such an incredible tempo game. This really isn't. This is almost designed to, I guess, counter Secret Power, but it really doesn't. Because if you take 5 secrets, it becomes a 7/9. But usually you only take 3 secrets on average against Secret Power. By the way, I'm talking about this for Wild, because Secret Power isn't a thing anymore. Because it's losing Mini Bot Buster and Shredder. And Avenge. And Standard. It would become a 5/7? Which is, it doesn't even trade with Challenger. I guess it destroys the secrets. But, they're basically making this card because this effect needs to exist. Because, if secrets ever get out of control, players need a way to deal with them, and this is it. If Freeze Mage becomes really dominant, and it might be, it depends on how fast the meta is. This card will probably see a lot of play as a one of, and a lot of decks are vulnerable to Freeze Mage. Besides that, it's probably not going to see play, so 2 out of 5. Loot Hoarder, Polluted Hoarder. 4 mana, 4/2, Death Rattle, draw a card. It's basically Death Rattle. It is Loot Hoarder, all corrupted. There's just so many other good 4-drops in the set. And if you compare this to Gnomish Inventor, it's just like, why? I don't know. It actually trades with things, unlike Gnomish Inventor, because that's what this is competing with, is Gnomish Inventor. Gnomish Inventor, 4 mana, 2/4, doesn't trade with things. That's the issue with the card. But this card, it trades with things. So if it just 4 mana, 4/2 is pretty bad. Like 3 mana 4/2 is debatably already bad. So 4 mana 4/2, if you think about it that way, is really, really bad. And so it just like it's only if we are really deprived of draw effects are we gonna resort to this card. And then it's also like, what? It's like, why not just pay the 1 extra mana for Azure Drake usually? So I think it's just a 1 out of 5. No, it's a 2 out of 5, because I don't think there's any card that says draw on it in the history of Hearthstone that hasn't seen competitive play. So 2 out of 5 just because it says draw a card. 3 mana Twilight Elder, 3 mana 3/4. At the end of your turn, give your Sethune +1/+1. So it's guaranteed to give your Sethune +1/+1. So that's on average. Then if it lives, it's +2/+2. So then it becomes basically just like a Beckoner of Evil. But then if it keeps living and keeps living and keeps living, and what I mean is like Beckoner of Evil, I mean like it's a baseline stat minion, 3 mana 3/4, and then it buffs +2/+2. So it's just I think the other 3 mana Sethune card just overshadows this one, but this card this card might still see play. It depends, to be honest. I think it's solid. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. I think it just gets overshadowed by the other 3 mana card. Like, there's nothing bad about it. It's just the other 3 mana Sethune card we're going to see later, I think, trumps it in like every way. Validated Doomsayer. 5 mana, 0/7. At the start of your turn, set this minion's attack to 7. Okay. This card, it's very meta dependent whether or not this card becomes good. The thing about it is, with BGH being nerfed, this kind of effect is just so much worse than what it would have been if BGH wasn't nerfed. Because on the turn where it can attack, it is a 7 mana 7/7. And it is a 7 attack minion. But the thing is that since BGH is gone, like, you can't, this effect is a lot worse. Like, it's BGH is nerfed, we're going to see a lot less of it. And then, you can't play this card when it's behind, because it's just going to die for free, basically. So you need to play this card when you're ahead. And I think a lot of other 5-drops are just, are good also when you're ahead. So, and then on top of that, if Priest is a thing, and it's playing Cabal Shadow Priest, you just can't play this card. Because you instantly lose the game if this gets Cabal Shadow Priest. So, I'm going to give this a 2 out of... Probably 1 out of 5. I don't think it's just playable. I just think there's other 5-drops that can be played. Probably. Faceless Shambler. 4 mana, 1/1, Taunt. Battle Cry, copy a friendly minion's attack and health. Okay. The immediate deck I think this goes into is Handlock. But my question is, does Handlock want this card? Or Reno Lock? I think Reno Lock is actually more relevant than Handlock, because Healbot's gone. Potentially. So, like, this is going to be good on cards like Twilight Drake and Mountain Giant, which both of those, which Reno Lock and stuff are going to play. It's just, it's really weak to silence, and you need to be ahead on board for it to be good. And you need a big minion on the board. And Warlock doesn't run a ton of really big minions. It just runs like a few critical threats and a bunch of weenie minions and utility cards. So on average, this card isn't going to be that good. We might see this in maybe Druid, and like Taunt Druid. I don't know. This card is really weird to me. I think it has some potential. I don't know where to put it. And if Silence is ever popular, or Black Knight is popular, this card just is instantly weaker. And I think Black Knight's already going to be popular in this meta. Like, really popular. Like, almost, like, put it in almost every deck popular. I think this card is just not that good. So 2 out of 5, it has potential, but I don't know where to put it, and Black Knight destroys it. Infested Torrent, 4 mana, 2/3, Taunt, Death Rattle, summon a 2/2 slime. This slime does not have Taunt, so it is not Babby Belcher. 4 mana, 2/3. I think that sums it up. I mean, that's Taunt, but at 4 mana, what does a 2/3 trade into? It doesn't really trade into anything, especially when most of the other 4 drops are 4 mana, 4/5s. I think this card is just straight up unplayable. But then again, Death Rattle effects are gaining value by the fact that Blizzard actually realized how good they are. Especially against board clears. So if you have a deck that needs anti-board clear cards and needs a taunt, I guess this is it for you. It's just, I don't see a situation where this card is good enough and that you need that. Like with this, you're willing to pay for this stat line at this mana cost for that effect. So probably 1 out of 5 unplayable. Tentacle of Enzoth, 1 mana, 1/1, Death Rattle, deal 1 damage to all minions. So this card is cool. It's just, I don't know where it goes. Because since Patron lost Deathbite, it doesn't go into Patron anymore. I mean, it'll probably be decent for Patron and Wild. Especially Hobo Goblin Patron, which is Reynad's deck. It's like, we have to compare this to Explosive Sheep, right? And I think this card is just worse than Explosive Sheep. So it just, like, because you have to still commit to it dying, and you get less benefit from it dying than you did Explosive Sheep, because Explosive Sheep did 2 damage. So I definitely think this card is more of a wild card and won't see much play, but it's a cool card that has potential in the future, so 2 out of 5 in my opinion. Cult Apothecary, 5 mana, 4/4, battle cry. For each enemy minion, restore 2 health to your hero. So I think immediately what comes to mind when I see this card is Freeze Mage. It's losing Healbot. It really doesn't run 5, so it doesn't conflict with anything. And oftentimes, Freeze Mage's opponent's boards are really, really filled. And if 7 minions are on your opponent's side of the board, this heals for 14, which is 5 mana, 4/4, heal for 14. That's really, really good. And so I see this being decent in Freeze Mage. I really do. Probably, maybe even just a straight up replacement for Ice Barrier. Because with the loss of Mad Scientist in Standard, I think Ice Barrier becomes maybe too slow to play in Freeze Mage. I'm not a Freeze Mage expert, but that's just something I feel. Like, you don't want to draw secrets right now, so why would you want to play Ice Barrier? Why not just play this thing, put a presence on the board that basically heals you for 4 because it's taking the 4 damage. It's probably removing a minion, and then it's going to heal you for a bunch. And it doesn't conflict on any mana slot with anything that you're already playing. So I think the Ice Barrier are going to get placed with this as a one of, and maybe Shatter, and maybe 2 of this in some metas. So I think this is a pretty decent card in Freeze Mage. I don't know where it goes besides that. But then again, as I've said again and again across all these videos, no heal card in the history of Hearthstone besides Voodoo Doctor has not seen competitive play. So this card could be a lot better than we think. I can already see a good place for it in Freeze Mage. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5, and it potentially could be a 4 out of 5 depending on what the meta is like. It's a cool card, and I like cards like this because it's just not just straight up good in every single situation. You actually had to put thought to put this card into your deck, and you had to realize what you're playing against. So it makes deck builders a lot stronger, and I love cards like this because I think rewarding people for good deck building is the direction Hearthstone should definitely go. And the more dynamic deck building becomes, the less net decking becomes relevant, because you need to think on the fly more rather than just going to some streamer and copying that deck and then hoping to hit legend. So yeah, I like this card. 3 out of 5. Ancient Harbinger, 6 mana, 4/6. The stats aren't awful. I mean, it's 1 more mana than Howl's Deal, but this is the neutral. So it can, like, it's not supposed to be as good as a class card. Instead, at the start of your turn, put 10 cost mana from your deck into your hand. So when you're thinking 10 cost mana minions, you're thinking old gods like Sethune, Yazaran, Enzoth, Siraj, and you're thinking Death Wings. Both Deathwing. That's going to be really confusing. I wish they call the card Natharian, because it'd be easier. Maybe as a community we should just name it Natharian, because that's what Deathwing used to be called. So that'd be cool if we could do that as a community and make it less confusing. Anyways, Ancient Harbinger. Like, Sethune decks are lacking a decent 6-drop. They are. And if a Sethune deck is playing as well as it should, like, it's curving out, and then it already has threatening minions on the board, and then you play this on top of that, it's going to be hard for your opponent to justify killing. Well, it's going to be easy for your opponent to justify it, but it might be hard for your opponent to kill it because they used a lot of their removal earlier on other things. But if you're behind and you play this, it's not so good. 6 mana 4/6 is not that good in stat line, and it isn't that good trading at that mana. Like, it really doesn't kill anything. It only trades down, not up. So it's a card really good when you're ahead, but it's not that good when you're behind. So, but its effect is really powerful if it gets off. And by the way, this can happen multiple times. If your opponent doesn't kill this 2 turns in a row, you'll get 2 10 mana cost cards in your hand, which means those are cards you don't have to draw into, and those are usually your win conditions. So it means you have your win condition. You're fishing for it. So I think this card has potential, and it's probably gonna see play probably in at least one Cthulhu deck. And I think that's cool. And I like cards like this because it disrupts your opponent's plan. When you play this thing, your opponent's going to have to kill it. They're going to have to abandon anything they were thinking of doing, most likely, and kill this thing, because they can't let you get your win condition for free. So it's a cool card, and I think has potential. So 3 mana, I think it's a 3 out of 5. It's really weak when you're behind. Scaled Nightmare, 6 mana, 2/8. At the start of your turn, double this minion's attack. I think this card is unplayable. I mean, dragons do lack a good 6-drop. I will admit that. But is this really that good of a 6-drop? Like, I guess if you're really, like, I like the deck I see this in is Dragon Priest. Probably. As Dragon Priest is usually ahead, because it just curves out so well. And then this card is really good when you're ahead. So, maybe it's not unplayable. Maybe it's playable in Dragon Priest, which I think is fine. Like, if a card finds a slot in one deck, that's perfectly fine. And so it might be a 1 of in Dragon Priest. That's cool. Besides that, this card is really bad when you're behind, because they're gonna trade into it, and then it's just so much worse. Because at 6 mana, it doesn't, when it first gets played, it doesn't trade into anything. But the 8 health makes it hard to kill. This card is going to require play, and I think it'll be really good in Dragon Priest, actually. 3 out of 5. The more I think about it, the better I think it is. It's just, if Cabal Shadow Priest is a thing, God, this card is bad. This card just gets wrecked by Cabal. And the Shadow of Pain, and any Control Priest, basically all of Control Priest, wrecks this card. But besides that, this card is pretty solid. And I think we'll probably see more Dragon Priest than Control Priest. So, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Scararm Cultist. 6 mana, 7/6. So, the stat line it's decent. It's Battle Cry. Give your Sethune +2/+2 wherever it is. So it's like almost baseline stat line. I wish it was a 6/7, but it really doesn't do anything. It doesn't do much the turn it's played is the issue, and it's competing with Cairn, Black Knight, and Sylvanas as well. So it's like the cards it's competing against are one of my biggest issues. But if a Sethune is finding a lacking of buff effects for a Sethune deck, and it's lacking 6-drops, it can throw this in there. It isn't a bad card. It won't see play outside of Sethune decks, because there are just so many other good 6-drops in the game. And with Big Game Hunter getting nerfed, the 7 attack isn't like as relevant, but it's just, if that was a 6/7, it trades better usually. So yeah. But if there's a lot of 7 mana 7/7s, this does get a lot better, because you play it on the turn before, and then they play their 7 mana 7/7, and if it's like Cho'Gall, though, it's gonna get Siphon Souled probably, but that means I can't Siphon Soul another card, another bigger threat. It just, usually in Sethune deck, your biggest threat is Sethune, and when you play it, your opponent's gonna die, or you should win the game off of that. So I definitely feel like this card is like midway, probably like 2 out of 5. Might see some play in one Cthulhu deck. I don't know. Spawn of Enzoth. Really cute. Death Rattle, give your minions +1/+1. 3 mana 2/2s, as I said, are really, really bad when this baseline is 3 mana 3/4. And then it's like, it's a really powerful effect. It does. It's just the body on it isn't good enough, and in the type of deck you want to play it in, it's just, it doesn't work out because you want a stronger body. Like in like a zoo-ish kind of deck, which is the kind of deck you want to play this in, you can't play this on curve, so it's just going to sit in your hand, which means you're going to tap, and then, like, more often, because you're having more cards just sit in your hand. And then, like, you're losing tempo, and if you play this on curve, it's just bad. It doesn't fit what the deck is trying to go for. But it's really cute art. It's a really powerful effect. It just, the body and the mana cost make it just kind of unplayable. 1 out of 5. Blood of the Ancient One. 9 mana, 9/9. If you control 2 of these, at the end of your turn, merge them into an Ancient One. The Ancient One is a 30/30, by the way. Let's see if it's the next card. No, it's not. Okay. We'll probably see at some point in this thing of cards. But anyways, this is a fun card. It's going to happen once in Arena, and we're going to laugh on the Trollden video. That's about it. The fact is that most of the time, I think you actually rather 2 9/9s over 30/30. And the Ancient One could be a 50/50. It could be a 60/60. It isn't going to change the fact that I think it's really unplayable. And on 9 mana, when you play this card, doesn't do anything the turn it's played. And a lot of 8 mana cards don't do anything the turn it's played, and they're strictly unplayable. So why is this any different? 1 out of 5, but it's gonna be funny when it happens to someone, and someone's gonna do something fun with it. So I can't wait to see that. Twilight Summoner. 4 mana, 1/1, destroy 5/5 Faceless Destroyer. Again, this card gets wrecked by Cabal Shadow Priest. But here's the issue with this card. You play it on 4. Your opponent's not going to kill it because they aren't dumb. And so it's even though it's a 4 mana 6/6, it's a 4 mana 6/6 over 3 turns before you get to attack with its better half. It's just so weak on tempo. Like, it's really good with buffs, like Power Overwhelming. So I guess it's targeted at Warlock. It's really good with like Abusive Sergeant. It's just Warlock really can't afford a card like this, I think. It might be like, it's either going to be absolutely unplayable or a dark horse that we don't see coming, and it's actually really, really solid. Because Blizzard has realized the value of Death Rattle is really good just because they survive through board clears. So I definitely so it's going to be one or the other. It's unplayable or it's absolutely amazing in some deck that we don't know about yet. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 because I think it's going to be on the more unplayable side, but just I have that caveat that it might be insane. We just don't know yet. But it's just going to require some testing. Aberrant Berserker. 4 mana, 3/5 enrage plus 2 attack. So this is a Monty Berserker corrupted. Monty Berserker doesn't see play. So I don't think this card is either. Like, enrage cards just aren't that good. Usually. because your opponent's probably just going to ignore them, and then if they get damaged in order to get their buff. I mean, I guess it has like decent stats, 4 mana 4/5, especially for an enraged minion, and then it goes to 4 mana 5/4 after damage, so it's not like spectacular is the thing. It's not like when it enrages, it goes to like a 7 attack minion that's like crazy. It's like average, and that's the issue. And in constructed, average usually just doesn't cut it. It'll probably be decent in arena though. So yeah. But I don't see this card being playing constructed 1 out of 5. It just doesn't cut it. Magma Rager. 3 mana 1/5. This is a parry on Magma Rager. They seem some need to print one of these every set, and they really don't need to. It's a joke. I think it's more playable than Magma Rager, but Warlock already has a 3 mana 1/5 that I already said is unplayable, so this is unplayable. Anyways, yeah, just unplayable. Blackwater Pirate. 4 mana, your weapons cost 2 less. 2/5. For effect like this, it has the correct stats. You want it to live. Or like the effect is stronger than like any body you could give it. So, like you want this, you want to play this card in the next turn. You want to play a really cheap weapon, and it's a pirate, which is really really cool. So you can play this on 4, but the issue is you probably want to play Arcanite Reaper after, so you're really not getting that effect. So it allows you though to play Gorehowl on 5, which is cool. But pirates are probably going to want to be going face at this point. Can't really see a pirate control warrior being a thing. So you can't really hit the face with Gorehowl, but you can remove a minion. And then if you play that 3 mana card afterwards, then you can start hitting face with Gorehowl. So if Pirate Warrior is a thing, and I think if we're going to see Pirates, we're definitely going to see it in Warrior, probably. This is a cool card. Possibly. And in the potential, as they print more weapons, this card is going to get better and better and better. So I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5, because the more I look at Pirate Warrior, the more I see it being a possible sleeper archetype that people aren't talking about that might be decent. And it'd be cool because Patron is dying, which means the only form of warrior is Control Warrior, and sometimes Control Warrior isn't that good in certain metas, but Pirate Warrior may be in the meta that Control Warrior isn't. Having Warrior on multiple archetypes I think is cool than just Control. So, solid card, 3 out of 5, and I think it's going to get better and better as time goes on. Bilefin Hunter. This is corrupted Tidefin Hunter. 2 mana, 2/1, Battlecry, 7/1/1, Ooze with Taunt, Murloc. Okay, so the issue is the Ooze is not a Murloc, and you want to play this probably in a Murloc deck. Maybe you want to play this in Zoo. Maybe, because the Taunt 1/1 is pretty decent. It all depends on how good Zoo is, and I really don't think Zoo is going to be that good in this upcoming meta. So, I don't know. I don't know how to evaluate this card because it isn't really my expertise for a card like this. I guess I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. Might see play in Zoo. Because the 1/1's not a Murloc, I don't really see it getting much play in Warlock in Murlocs. And again, Murlocs aren't really a thing right now. So, anyways, 2 out of 5. Bog Creeper. This is a parody on Fen Creeper. 7 mana, 6/8 Taunt. It just overcosted for its stats is the issue. And I guess that's fine for a neutral 7 mana taunt. It just, in the decks you want to play this, there are just better cards, and if you're going to pay this much for a taunt with this kind of stat line, I think you're going to want to play one of the legendaries we're going to see later, so it doesn't get wrecked by removal spells. I think this, the most common places we'll see play is Arena. I think this card is probably just strictly unplayable, like Fen Creeper is 1 out of 5. Corrupted Seer, 6 mana, 2/3. Deal 2 damage to all non-Murloc minions. This is a parody on one of the Murloc buff cards, like Cold Light Seer or whatever. Just dust it. It's bad because in a it's a 6 mana 2/3 first of all, and so you're paying 2 mana for 2/3, and you're doing Consecrate to all non-Murlocs, I guess. But still, it's like a 6 mana Consecrate because I don't think you care about the 2/3 body on 6 mana. So it's not that good. I guess it gives Murloc some sort of potential late game, and I guess this would go in maybe Murloc Paladin over Consecrate, which would allow them to have more Murlocs in their deck and like give them more deck slots. I don't know. Like, I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5 because if there's ever a late game Murloc deck, I guess this will see play. But it's probably just instant dust. 1 out of 5. Crazed Worshipper, 5 mana, 3/6. Taunt. Whenever this minion takes damage, give your Sethune +1/+1 wherever it is. 5 mana, 3/6 taunt. It's Fen Creeper with plus something. It's Fen Creeper isn't playable, and it's, I guess if you're desperate for Sethune buff effects, this will be decent. Like, it'll probably on average buff your Sethune +2 because it has 6 health. So 5 mana, 3/6 taunt, +2/+2 to Sethune. It just, Fen Creeper doesn't see play, so it's hard for me to see this card getting play, especially probably in a Black Knight meta. So 2 out of 5, probably 1 out of 5, unplayable. Cyclopean Horror, 4 mana, 3/3 taunt. Battlecry, gain +1 health for each enemy minion. This card is it's better than the last taunt card we saw. It's just I don't know. It's gonna be good in slower decks that fall behind. It might be the sleeper Sludge Belcher of a set. Maybe. I don't know. It just, Sludge Belcher was really good because you could just play it on an empty board and it was fine. Just, you can't play this on an empty board. 4 mana 3/3 is not acceptable. And if you play it when your opponent is 1 minion, it's like, so when you're ahead, this card is bad, and when you're behind, so you want to be in a deck where you're really far behind, and then there's a 3 attack taunt with, like, if they have 2 minions, it's a 4 mana 3/5, which is Senjin. If they have 3 minions, it's just above Senjin, so it's it's like the dragon card. And is that gonna cut it? I don't think so. But it's not unplayable. It's just, I don't think it's gonna cut it in Constructed, probably. We'll see though. I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5 for now. Dark Speaker, 5 mana, 3/6, swap stats with a friendly minion. I think this is called Dust Speaker. Like it's so weird because I would want to reverse the stats on this minion, but then again that's almost like a charge effect, and Blizzard doesn't like those. So it's like abusive sergeant. It's just it's like 5 mana 3/6 with charge. It just is not that good in my opinion. It's a weird card. It really is. Like, if you use it on a weak minion and then trade with it, like you don't want to use this on a minion with a good effect and then trade with it. And like if your minion already traded, this card is like this body that it gets instead is weak. It just, I don't see any situation where you want this effect with this stat line. So yeah, I think it's a Dust Speaker, 1 out of 5 unplayable. Disciple of S'thun. This is a 3-mana S'thun card I was talking about earlier. Battlecry, deal 2 damage. Give your S'thun +2/+2 wherever it is. This card is awesome. It's like it's like SI7 Agent for all classes with just a weaker stat line, but who cares? I think this is going to probably see like a 2 of in every C'thun deck. But I could be wrong. Maybe a 3-mana 2/1 is just because that's like you're paying 2 mana for that effect. But it just like I think it's just better than a 3/4. So I'm gonna give this a 3 out of 5 because you are paying 2 mana to deal 2 damage because you're getting a 1 mana body out of it. But you're also buffing S'thun, and the other S'thun 3-drop is not that appealing in general. So definitely I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. Doomcaller, 8 mana, 7/9. Battlecry, give your S'thun +2/+2. If it's dead, shuffle it into your deck. Now this doesn't just give you another S'thun. Your S'thun actually has to be dead. That was clarified. So, but the thing about this card, like this is a really slow card, and the thing about this card is that if you already played S'thun and it died, and it didn't kill your opponent, I think you've already lost at that point. And this doesn't just like add that S'thun to your hand; it puts it back into your deck, which means you need to draw S'thun again in order to play it. And are you really going to have time to buff S'thun, play it, have it not kill your opponent, then play this card, then get S'thun back, draw it, and play it again for 10 mana? And my answer is no. You're probably never going to have that much time. I'm just going to ask your opponent what they're doing if you do, because they obviously aren't doing anything. So 1 out of 5 probably just strictly unplayable because 8 mana 7/9 does not cut it because it doesn't do anything for 8 mana on the turn that is played. 2 mana 4/1 Beast Dustspore. This dies to like everything. This literally dies to anything. Might see playing Face Hunter, maybe. I don't know. Just it. I think charge is missing on it. It just. I don't know. It just dies to everything. Like Magma Rager wasn't playable. I don't think this will be playable. Because like if your opponent is a class like Mage or Rogue or Hunter, or Druid, they're just gonna ping this thing. Or it's gonna just die to swipe. or it's gonna die to anything, and nothing's gonna happen with it. And then even if you buff it with Houndmaster, it's a 6 mana. It's a 6/3. That isn't even that good. Like, it needs to live a turn usually to deal damage. So, then the best case scenario is when you play it on turn 2 and doesn't get answered. So, I think this card just isn't really playable. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 because maybe Face Hunter. Maybe. I don't know. I think it's just too slow. I mean, I think it just, yeah, it's too slow for Face Hunter. Eldritch Horror. 8 mana, 6/10. Eight mana does nothing the turn is played. This card is unplayable. I've said that several times. 8 mana does nothing the turn is played. It's unplayable. It has an awesome stat line for trading down, though. And, so yeah. It's probably good in Arena. Maybe. I don't know. But I guess, like, I don't know. It doesn't nothing the turn is played. So yeah, let's just leave it at that. Evolve Kobold, 4 mana, plus 2 spell damage. It's a 4 mana 2/2. And 4 mana spell power is usually pretty bad if it doesn't have a decent body, because it won't live, and it's hard to sync it up with a spell because it's 4 mana. So it just bad tempo wise, and it's hard to use with a spell. So this card is just unplayable. 1 out of 5. Faceless Behemoth, 10 mana, 10/10. It's nice to have a baseline 10 mana card, like to just know what baseline stats is for a 10 mana card. But, and I guess in budget decks, like super budget decks, this and like the other 8 drop might see play, but it just 10 mana does nothing the turn is played. Why are you gonna play this? 1 out of 5. This is a spawn off a legendary that we're about to probably see soon. 7 Grotesque Dragonhawk. 7 mana, 5/5 Wind Fury. I mean, if you compare this to Wind Fury Harpy, is the 1 attack really worth it in the beast tag? I don't think so. I think, but my friend Conrad mentioned something to me, and I'm probably gonna do it for 10 mana. I mean, you can do the same thing with Wolf and Harpy, but I think this is a better meme. You play Grotesque Dragonhawk, you play Charge, and the Warrior card Charge, and you hit them for 14. I'm probably going to Alex and Grotesque Dragonhawk some people for the memes, but besides that, I don't see this card seeing play. Yeah, it just strictly worsened Wind Fury Harpy, because the only classes that care about the Beast Tag are Druid and Hunter, and I don't see either one of them caring about this card over Wind Fury Harpy. And Wind Fury Harpy is already not playable. 1 out of 5. But it's going to create an awesome meme deck. 4 mana, Midnight Drake. 4 mana, 1/4. Battlecry, gain +1 attack for each other card in your hand. So it's literally the reverse of Twilight Drake. Twilight Drake is really, really good because it has a really high health pool, so it can trade a lot with things that are down. And in decks where you have a lot of cards in your hand on turn 4, it means that you didn't really play any minion, so you're behind on board, which means that minion that you just played needs to trade down. This only trades up and trades well with the face. And the thing is, in a face deck, you're probably going to be playing a lot of cards early, which means this card is not that good because it's not going to get that much of a buff. So I think this card is just strictly unplayable. But But I guess it's cool. It's a really cool art, I guess. But it's a 1 out of 5. Nerubian Prophet, 6 mana, 4/4 at the start of your turn, reduces cards by 1. Now I don't know. I'm pretty sure this has to be in your hand for this effect to work, because otherwise it'd be ridiculous. I think. It just the issue is a card like this. Like the whole point is you play in a super long control deck, right? And it sits in your hand turn after turn after turn. So this is a card in your hand that you're not playing, which means like this is like it just taking space in your hand, and that's a card that could potentially have been something else this entire time, and just sitting there and sitting there and sitting there for 6 turns, and eventually it costs 0 mana. You do something crazy as a control deck, and then you play this card as a 4/4. The issue is a 4/4 body isn't worth that effect. Like this would be crazy if it's like a 6/6, but then it would actually maybe be a little broken. I don't know. It just, to me, this card is just, like, not playable. So 1 out of 5. Because it just, this effect isn't worth it. The stats you're getting. This is, the ooze from the Murloc card we saw earlier with Taunt. The Biofin Hunter. Psychotron. Awesome art. But 5 mana, 3/4 Taunt, Divine Shield. So you're paying 2 mana for Taunt and Divine Shield, which usually is worth a mana each on a minion. 5 mana, 3/4 stat line. It's not as good as what Noyotron was, because you were literally paying like you're paying like 0 mana for one of those effects, 1 mana for the body, and 1 mana for the Taunt. Oh no, it was a Gold Shire Footman with Divine Shield. So yeah, it was exactly at its mana. It just, this is exactly as mana, kinda. It just, I think it's mana value. It's just at 5 mana, 3/4 Root doesn't trade to anything, and that's the issue. And it's too cheap to just be annoying, because like you're actually committing a lot of mana to this. Not just like something you play on top of like a Noyotron is cool because you can play a big minion and then play a Noyotron, and then the Noyotron would protect your big minion. You don't care what the Noyotron did. It all would, like, to your opponent's minion that traded into it. All you cared about was that it was protecting your more important minion. But this is too expensive to do that with, so I think it's strictly unplayable. 1 out of 5. Celithid Swarmer. 3 mana, 3/5, so it's above baseline. It's 1 health above baseline. And then, can only attack if your hero attacked this turn. Which means you need a weapon, probably. So this is like a card that's like decent in Rogue, a Warrior, where you have a lot of weapons. It's just, you're paying, it's just such a situational card, and if you don't have a weapon, this card is just bad. And you're not gaining that much out of it. I really don't see this seeing play, especially with the other, like, because I think the weapon aggro-ish class is going to be Warrior, probably, and I see the other 3-drop being better. I don't know, this might see play in Warrior, Pirate Warrior, weapon like aggro warrior, but I feel you're not gaining enough for it to have this downside effect. So I'm gonna give it like, I don't know, a 2 out of 5, because maybe it is a sleeper card. Because I feel the downside is too much for the upside of the 1 extra health, especially in an aggro deck where you may want the 1 extra attack. Squirming Tentacle. 3 mana, 2/4 Taunt. So it's 1 health below base, 1 attack below baseline, 3 mana, 3/4, and it has Taunt. It's not awful, but I don't think it makes the cut. It's really good at trading down though. I think there are 2 mana 2/4s with taunt that are available, and like the priest one. I don't think this card makes the cut. It's not terrible. It's just not good enough for constructed. So it's like 1 out of 5. It isn't playable for constructed, especially since it has no tribe. So it has like no synergies. Twilight Geomancer. 2 mana 1/4 taunt. Battlecry, give your Sithun taunt. Okay. This is really good at beating up 2/1s. The give your Sithun taunt I think is irrelevant, because I don't think Sithun is ever going to be a card that you play and you hope it protects you usually. I think it's a card you're going to play and your opponent dies, and that's what happens. But I could be wrong. I think usually giving Sithun taunt isn't worth playing this card, but it's cool to have a 2 mana 1/4 taunt, and I think this might see play in Cthulhu Priest, which could potentially buff it up. It's a shame that the losing Valen's chosen, and I think their other buff that we saw earlier, the like 5 mana 2/6, this becomes a 3 mana 3 mana. I mean, it's gonna be a 3/10, but that's like 7 mana 3/10. Is that the taunt in the Black Knight meta? I really don't see this card seeing play. Maybe it's just a 2-drop in Priest because they need one. But I think we're definitely going to see more Dragon Priest. So, 2 out of 10 maybe? I don't know. Probably 2 out of 10. Zealous Initiate. 1 mana 1/1. Battle Cry, give a friendly minion +1/+1. This isn't actually not too bad. I like cards like this. I think this is cool. This is this is a card that could be cool in Death Rattle Rogue. This is a cool card that we could cool in Zoo. Like, there's a 1 mana 1/1 with like a Death Rattle like this is cool. I think in general, like it's only one stat line below standard, and then you're getting +1/+1 and probably a more valuable minion later. And it gets you on the board, and it's really not a commitment for a buff like this. And it makes board clears probably more tricky. So I think this could be decent, and it could be strictly unplayable. Probably more on the decent side, so 2 out of 5 maybe? 3 out of 5? Okay, so I think we're finally getting into the legendaries. Deathwing Dragonlord. This is the card I was talking about. Could we just call it Aetherian? Because that's what Deathwing's original name was. I think that'd be a lot cooler. Maybe Blizzard, if you see this, you could think about changing it so it's less confusing. But Aetherian Dragonlord. Death Rattle. 10 mana 12/12. Okay, so he's the original stats of Deathwing. Death Rattle, put all your dragons from your hand into the battlefield. First of all, it's a Death Rattle of 12 health. That is really, really, really hard. It's really hard to die. And then your opponent has less incentive to kill it because it has a Death Rattle. So the only time they're going to kill it is when the attack is actually relevant and it's going to kill them. And then at that point, don't you already win the game? It feels like a win more card usually. And the only situation I can ever see this ever getting play is Dragon Paladin. But I think Control Paladin is just going to be strictly better than Dragon Paladin. The reason why I say Dragon Paladin is Dragon Consort and make this 8 mana, but 8 mana 12/12, is it really that much better? I don't know. So, I think this card is probably just strictly unplayable with Dragon Paladin probably not being that good, and that's the only deck I can see myself playing this card in. So, because because I can't see myself playing this in Dragon Warrior. I'm just going to play Ysera or Onyxia or Axtraza, something that actually does something. So, unplayable. It's a cool card, so I'll give it a 2 out of 10 by the fact that it's cool. So, 7 mana 6/6, Hogger, Doom of Elwyn. Whenever this minion takes damage, summon a 2/2 Null of Taunt. That was the Null you saw earlier. So it's a 7 mana 6/6, which isn't awful. And people are talking about this being card in Patron, but again, I don't think Patron's going to be relevant. So I think that's an irrelevant point. Maybe in Wild it'll be relevant. It'll be competing with Dr. Boom there, so that's a little weird. But this card is better than it looks, but is it good enough is my question. A deck like this card would probably want to go into is like Priest, where it could constantly heal it, and you constantly get value out of it, like in its effect. So I definitely, so like if that kind of Priest becomes a thing, maybe. And the fact that the Knolls keep protecting it is really, really cool. Because you can keep trading it, keep healing it, and keep spawning Knolls. And dealing with 6 health is really hard to just do in one, like, it's good. So, like, if you think about it, when you trade into this card, you're probably more than likely going to trade 2 things into it. Which means you're probably going to have to trade 3 things into it, because you're going to need to kill the Null that you just spawned with the first trade. So, this card is better than it looks, and it has potential. Probably in Priest. So, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Because it will probably maybe see play in one deck, I think. And it's a cool card. So, Mukla, Tyrant of the Veil. 6 mana 5/5. So, the stats aren't that bad. Add 2 bananas to your hand. Okay, so the issue with this is that it's on the wrong mana slot. It's competing with a very, very highly contested mana slot right now, which is 6. It has Cairn, it has Sylvanas, it has Black Knight. So it's like, in most decks, are you going to want 1 mana spells over the effects of those cards? And I think probably not. And then the decks that want 1 mana spells are probably like Miracle. And Miracle is already running Emperor. That's another 6-drop it's contesting with. So this might see play later when Emperor eventually gets cycled out in Miracle as a replacement. But even then, it feels a little slow. And +1/+1 in Miracle is not that good. So it feels a little weird. And I think it's more like a 2 out of 5. Because it has potential in some deck that wants 1 mana spells. But I don't see it being that good over like the lineup of 6-drops we currently have, especially in the classic set. Boogie Monster. 8 mana 6/7. When this minion attacks and kills a minion, gain ++2. Why couldn't this say when this minion kills a minion? Why couldn't they just say that? This is dust. You just dust this card instantly. This card's never gonna see play ever. Ever. It's an 8 mana card that does nothing the turn it's played, and its effect is terrible. Its stats are terrible. Your opponent is no way gonna ever attack into it. I mean, no, your opponent is actually going to attack into it after you play it and just kill it. And then you're not going to get any value out of its effect. It's bad. Just dust it. This is by far one of the worst cards in the entire set. 0 out of 5. It's completely unplayable. Sagoth the Slitherer. 9 mana 5/9. Taunt, can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. This is a potential dark horse of the set. And I mean dark horse, I mean like really, really, really good card or really, really crappy card. It's going to be one or the other. I don't see it being a middle ground. I see it being insane. I see it being garbage. And I think with as much Black Knight we're going to see, it's probably going to be on the side of garbage. But if this card sticks, you probably just win the game. Because your opponent couldn't deal with it the first turn, it's going to keep doing things. Your opponent's probably just never going to be able to remove it because you're just going to constantly keep removing their minions. And they're never going to be able to remove this because it's taunt. They're never just going to be able to cheese you out. Like, this card has a lot of potential. It's just, if Black Knight is ever a thing, this card is unplayable. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Nat the Dark Fisher. 2 mana 2/4. At the start of your turn, at the start of your opponent's turn, they have a 50% chance to draw a card. This is going to see play in Modex. That's about it. 2 mana 2/4. It's 1 health above baseline. And so it isn't worth it for any other deck unless you want your opponent to draw a card. But in the Mo deck, it's cool. It's a really, really cool card. And Mill Rogue will probably... I don't know. Mill Rogue is losing Healbot and Belcher and Death Lord, and so it's a little weird if we're going to see Mill decks anymore. Well, Mill Rogue, which I think this would be the bet. Or fits in... We might see Mill Druid, though. It's going to fit into some kind of Mill deck, so I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Because Mill decks are traditionally not the best decks in the world. But if a super mega control meta comes, like, I mean where if your deck is not control, you lose on the spot kind of thing, then Mill decks are insane because it just evolves into more and more and more like super control where both players are just like hoarding all these cards, these mega bombs, and then Mill decks come in and they mill those decks out because they aren't fast enough to kill the Mill deck. So, and I think that's why Mill decks need to exist. So the meta doesn't become like that because that will actually feel like a pay-to-win meta, and it'll also feel like it'll be such a slow meta. Like, you're talking like 25-30 minute games minimum, and I think a lot of people who play Hearthstone don't want that. So I think that's cool, and I think keeping the idea of a Mill decks alive is really, really cool. So I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5, but Mill decks traditionally are not top tier. That's why it isn't getting any higher. Shifter Xeris. Each turn, this is in your hand. Transform it into a random minion. 1 mana, 1/1. Still have to play the full cost of that minion, so trying to compare this Unstable Portal is not even close. This is a Dark Pillar buff, is how I see this. If you get this off Dark Pillar, you're pretty happy because you have a chance to get a bomb like a Ysera or something off a Dark Pillar. So that's really cool. Besides that, I really don't... This card is so weird because like something amazing will at some point happen with it, but I don't think that's the case of playing it as a card in your deck, because most of the time it's just going to be below average. Like, you definitely want this card in a really slow deck, because the more turns you have it in your hand, the more likely it is to some point hit something good for that turn, for one of your turns. But it's like, is that a kind of effect worth a card in your deck? Because you only have 30 cards, guys. Is that worth one of them? Probably not. So, as I said, this will probably see play in the form of Dark Peddler, and that's cool. So, I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5, just because the fact that Dark Peddler is one of the best cards in the history of Hearthstone, I think. Or at least one of the best Warlock cards in the history of Hearthstone. And so it's going to see a lot of play. If Warlock sees a lot of play, and through that card, we're going to see some of this. And that's going to be cool. So, 2 out of 5. Twin Emperor Velcro. This is the card I was talking about that makes Cthulhu Warrior kind of weird. And, well, actually, let's explain it first. But 7 mana, 4/6 taunt. Battle Cry. If your Cthulhu has at least 10 attacks, summon another Emperor. This is probably the best card in the entire set in a vacuum. Like, 7 mana, 2/4/6 taunt. 5 mana, 4/6 taunt is like, that's like Druid of the Claw. So for additional 2 mana, you get another Druid of the Claw. Think about that. Think about that. That is insane. That is nuts in a Cthulhu deck. Because you need to play at least like 2 Beckoners of Evil, like basically like 2 Cthulhu cards on average, which by 7 is not that hard in a Cthulhu deck. So this is probably the Dr. Boom of the set. This is in a Cthulhu deck. Again, the caveat is it needs to be in a Cthulhu deck, but in a Cthulhu deck, this card is nuts. So it's a 5 out of 5 in Cthulhu decks. It's nuts. Crazy good. Like, you're going to be dreading turn 7s this meta, just like you did last meta against Cthulhu decks, because you know it's about to hit. And that's why Cthulhu Warrior is so weird, with their only really Cthulhu support card being at 7 mana and conflicting with this card, when Cthulhu decks are going to be more tempo based. And so you want to play on curve, so the Warrior card gets weaker because this card exists. I mean, I guess the Warrior card trades into these good because of the 6 mana 6/6. I think you'd just rather play this card usually. So it's just weird. You're gonna have 3 7 drops and a Cthulhu Warrior. I don't know. Anyways, this is a 5 out of 5. This is probably the best card of the set in a vacuum. It's nuts. And this is the other Emperor it summons. 7 mana, 4/6 taunt. Yogg-Saron, Hope's End. God, I love this card. God, I love it. 10 mana, 7/5, Battle Cry. Cast a random spell for each spell you've cast this game. Targets chosen randomly. Okay. I have a few problems with this card. None of them are RNG based. I love this card. I think it's going to be so much fun, and I don't think it's going to be competitive, which is awesome. Also, my biggest problem with it is that he doesn't hysterically, as we see in the Ben Brode, he doesn't hysterically laugh the entire time the effect is going on. Blizzard, in your game, World of Warcraft, which this game is based off, you have a voice file of Yogg-Saron already hysterically laughing. Well, just put it in the game. Come on. It'd be awesome if he's hysterically laughing the entire time the effect is going on. That's my biggest problem with this card, is that doesn't happen. Come on, man. Anyways, besides that, Yogg-Saron's my favorite old god, and you need to look on Reddit. There's some post on Reddit that has all the stats of what this card can do. I mean, it's just a card that you're gonna build decks around, and crazy things are gonna happen. That's what's gonna happen with this card. It's not competitive, probably. and it has like a 10% chance or something to kill itself. It like has a 80% chance to like clear your opponent's board. It like is a pretty high chance to draw you cards. You're probably going to heal yourself. You're probably going to play a few secrets. It's going to be a good time. And by the way, when he dies, he continues his effect, even if he kills himself. So, but again, only a 4 out of 5 because he's not hysterically laughing the entire time the effect is going on. That needs to happen, Blizzard. Come on. You know you want to do it. Yasharaj Rage Unbound. 10 mana 10/10 at the end of your turn, put a minion from your deck into the battlefield. Yasharaj in lore is actually the strongest of the old gods, fun fact. So powerful that Titan himself needed to pluck him from Azeroth and then left a Well of Eternity, which started a whole bunch of the WoW lore. So, pretty important dude. I'm actually surprised we haven't seen any Shaw stuff in this expansion. My guess they're saving that. Anyways, enough WoW lore. I think this card is probably the weakest of the old gods, ironically. The only the deck I can ever see this in is like Super Mega Ramp Druid. And then if it pulls out an Ancient of War, you're pretty sad. If it pulls out a... what's it called? Pulls out an Azure Drake, you're pretty sad. If it pulls out anything of Battlecry effect, you're pretty sad in those decks. And then apparently when you pull out a Rag or your Sarah, those effects don't go off. So I think you're pretty sad if those are pulled out and those get removed as well. I guess if you have free Sarah or Rag, you're not sad. It's so slow, and it doesn't really do much on the turn that's played besides pull something out of your deck, and then that's weak against Brawl and other huge AoEs, and I think it's too slow for a 10 mana card. Usually a 10 mana card you want to end the game with, but we don't know. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. Might have a little potential, but it's probably the weakest of all the old gods. Ends off the Corruptor. 10 mana, 5/7. Battle Cry. Summon your Death Rattle minions that died this game. This is a really powerful effect, but most of the good Death Rattle minions are going out. They're being rotated out is the issue. So I see this card being incredibly powerful and wild with cards like Mad Scientist, Haunted Creeper, and Rubian Egg, yada yada yada. Like all those cards with this card are nuts. It's going to be very often that you can get like a full board of Death Rattle minions in wild. But in standard, you have to look at what Death Rattle minions would be left, and they're pretty lackluster except for Can and Sylvanas. And funny enough, this has synergy with Deathwing, Dragon War. Netherian. You know what? We're going to call it Netherian. Dragon Void. And which is cool, WoW lore-wise, because Endoth's the one who corrupts Deathwing. So yeah, the fact that they have synergy is cool, but again, it's a wild card. Really powerful effect. Might have future potential, but I don't see it being insane in standard. So I'm going to give it like a 3 out of 5, maybe 2.5 out of 5. Might have potential. It's a cool card though. Cool art. So Thune, the card I've talked about many times about this over all these reviews. So 10 mana, 6/6, Battle Cry, deal damage equal to this minion's attack randomly split among all enemies. I mean, okay, so basically you get this card for free. I'm probably going to craft it gold because I'm just looking at this gold and it looks sick. Anyways, it's either going to be really good or it's going to be a starter deck. Like, I think it's going to be good in Rogue, and it's going to probably be decent and everything else. Basically, the idea behind this card and the reason why they're giving it to people for free is that for newer players, it's a very easy deck, common sense deck to kind of build. You put a whole bunch of Sithun buff cards in a deck together, it has synergy, and then you have a win condition to throw out there. Like, it's common sense to kind of build it, and that's why they're giving it to you for free. And so newer players have something that they kind of understand from the start. It teaches them synergies, and it teaches them tempo, and it teaches them what a win condition is. So I think it's a really good thing for the game that this card exists, and I think he's going to be good in Rogue. But besides that, maybe Druid. People are thinking because the Druid Sithun cards are good, but I think it's mostly going to be Rogue, and I think it's maybe going to be... No, I don't see it being good in Priest, really. I don't know. I think it's mostly just going to be Rogue. Sithun Rogue. Anyways, besides that, I think I'm going to give this card a 4 out of 5. Just because it's good game design, and it's good for new players, and it has a potential to make a tier 1 or tier 2 deck. So I think that's it. Here's the Ancient One you're talking about with Blood of the Ancient One. Here's a Shadow Beast, Faceless Destroyer, and that is it. That is the entire card review for Whispers of the Old Gods. My overarching opinion, I think this is going to be an awesome set. In general, I think we're going to have a much more fun period of Hearthstone than what we've had over the last 5-6 months. Like, Secret Power is going to be gone. Cancer Druid's going to be gone. So... well, most likely, Token might just be straight Cancer. We'll see. I think a lot of the gender things are going to be gone. I think it's going to be a lot less punishing meta. I think the power level of everything is going down. So, like, just missing your turn 3 or your turn 2 isn't going to, like, automatically lose you the game on the spot, like it sometimes does right now. And I think games are going to go usually going to go longer, which I think is a good thing, because the more turns, the more decisions, and the more for that skill and deck building to shine through. So I think we're going to enter a much better period of Hearthstone than when we've had for a while now, and that makes me really happy. And just getting new cards in general makes me really, really happy. I hope the next set does not take almost 7 months to come out. I mean, that's a little ridiculous. But anyways, guys, thank you for watching all of these videos if you have from the start. I guess this is where I plug. Right now I'm here at the Cave, Fairfax, in Fairfax, Virginia. We are sponsored by DX Racer. We're soon going to be doing giveaways with those. We have something really big with Hearthstone potentially coming down the line, and we have and that will be announced somewhat soon-ish. And you can follow me at Wheva on Twitter. I really appreciate more Twitter followers. And besides that, I run weekly Hearthstone tournaments here every single Wednesday. So it's at 6 p.m. and we start the stream at 7 p.m. EST. I cast that with guest casters every single Wednesday, and it's an overall pretty good time. So come down or watch the stream. It's at Twitch TV/TheCaveFairfax. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on ladder.